Hello. Okay, I think it's working. Hi everybody. This time we are on time, sharp, 7 o'clock. Hey, hello. So what you are about to hear today is the fourth artist talk from our series of Spring Pulses, and I've been told by my friends that I'm actually always forgetting to introduce myself, so I'm trying to do this now properly. My name is Alina Oserova, and I'm Amsterdam-based artist. I work with sound and film, and I'm part of the Compulsive Sound platform. So I see that Claire is joining us. Hi, Claire. I'm gonna wave you. Claire Nichols is the artist of this week. We've been streaming her latest piece on our YouTube channel. We started on Thursday, and you can still access this video link until Sunday. And as usual, on Saturdays we are giving. Oops, that's a chicken in the oven. On Saturdays, we are giving a chance to the artists to talk about their practice and also get some questions from the audience. So please save some questions. You will have time to ask them. I see Claire is ready to join us. Claire? I'm gonna try this again. Claire, can you try maybe to press this button once again? Go live. Hello? Yeah, I will try to add Claire again. I think we might need to try again. Claire, if you hear me, can you leave this live feed and then come again and then send me again the request to add you? Claire? So what we're gonna do again, Claire, can you try to leave and join again? Yay. Yay. My heart went boom, 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 boom. What are we gonna do?
I'm here.
So, big welcome to Claire Nichols and her piece that we are showing currently in the program Spring Pulse. Her piece is called E.KA.TE Variations. You will all have still chance to see this piece until Sunday. And I prepared quite an interesting list of questions for Claire. And I also would like to remind the guys that are watching us and will join probably a bit later that there will be a moment for questions and answers from questions from the audience, and you can type it later as a comment. I will see it and I will read it to Claire. Yeah.
Sounds good.
How this weekend is going for you?
Good, yeah, thank you. I was doing an Alexander technique, teaching an Alexander technique class this morning. So yeah, I feel quite energized.
That's cool. You got warmed up for a lot of. I wanted to start with maybe a little more detailed introduction of this piece that we're showing. We're honored to show. That's quite a recent piece, yeah, because it was created during the residency in Cyprus in November, December 2020, which means very, very recently, and already during the COVID situation. And could you maybe tell us a few things about that residency? How did it feel? How did you get invited there? Was it open call or?
Yeah, sure. So it's actually two residencies that I did in Cyprus. So the first was an open call for a performance residency, which was a kind of where international artists from different places were accepted and that was a 2-week residency. So I came to know some local artists also in Nicosia and Cyprus. We explored the city together, and we worked a lot with different forms of improvisation and performance. And from there, I decided to stay a bit longer in Cyprus, and E.KA.TE, where the original performance residency was hosted, invited me to stay for a month or even 6 weeks, I think, to to develop those ideas that I'd already started, and yeah, and sort of take those a bit further. And so yeah, I decided to basically grow this series called The Variations, which I've been working on for the past 3 or 4 years, and which involves collaborations with other practitioners. So in this instance, a collaboration with a musician. Yeah, and my work often starts from a kind of sculptural kind of standpoint. So I started making a kind of sculptural scene inside the space, with objects that I gathered from the local area.
Beautiful objects, I have to say. Beautiful objects and beautifully filmed ones.
Beautifully filmed ones. Yeah, yeah. I really like the way. So I also, as well as a collaboration with a musician, I was very much in the last phases collaborating with the videographer, and I was really interested in how he also saw the work from a completely different angle that I was not able to see it from, and how we were able to kind of construct something together in that way.
Yeah. I hope that you created there, and by
I think you found for just a second. I don't know if it's my connection, but
I will say
sorry.
that, yeah. So while I was watching it, I felt kind of submerged in that space that you created. But also, I mean, as a professional, I also understand that it's not just, you know, the room that you were working, but it's also a cinematic space that happened with the performance of yourself, but also with the decisions that were taken by the cinematographer. And that made me feel, even though I was sitting, you know, it's brightly lit kitchen, it made me feel as if I'm there, you know. I almost felt that everything around me got dark, and I was just following the light, the flashlight, and the reflections and the projections. So it was quite a powerful experience for me. And I was wondering, because we also mentioned it a few times when we were presenting your work, that this is a performance for the camera. But it made me think also, in that kind of a setup, what could be the place for the audience?
Yeah. So originally, actually, the performance was intended to. It was sort of safe enough for most of the residency to have an audience, or at least we were thinking about having an audience see the work from the outside, from the windows. It's quite a big space, quite big windows. So at night, to be able to see through from the windows. We had to change that quite last minute because of the change in regulations. And so it became this kind of opportunity to sort of see it as this really kind of intimate kind of collaboration between myself and the musician and the videographer. And yeah, I really enjoyed how, because when I perform, I'm thinking both in terms of I'm interested in the kind of tactile qualities of the objects that I'm working with and how they feed the kind of improvisation. So it's something quite zoomed in a way. But then also at the same time, in order to improvise, I'm utilizing my peripheral vision, and the space was quite large, and I was creating these projections that sort of carried beyond, sort of not just in my immediate space, but were also in the spaces sort of in the far corners of my eyes. So what was really nice about the collaboration with the videographer is that he was able to, we had 4 cameras, but in the end he used mainly the camera with a gimbal because it provided him the opportunity to be able to kind of track and follow my movements and the textures, but at the same time then kind of zoom in and show a kind of sort of create a dynamic movement that was also reflecting the kind of movement relationship I had with the musician. So it was, yeah, it was great to be able to, and in a way then, you know, the videographer constructs this kind of image and in collaboration with me. So we were talking about the dynamics of how that would work before making it and then after the fact. But also for me, like the viewer is making the work when they're watching it too. It's
Editing.
and editing it and discovering it, because there's a lot of very dark spaces and then things emerge in the corners or and it moves quite quickly, so it's sort of inviting you to kind of stay with it as this process of kind of discovery. So yeah, but it was very interesting to think about the audience in a completely different way, because usually I'm used to this embodied presence of the viewers that I feed off of as well.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add a little bit to what you said about the way Pavlos moved with the camera, because also a part of my let's say commercial practice, I also film performances for other artists, and specifically the ones that have a lot of movement, that you can just put, you know, a camera on a tripod and have a perfect frame and chill until it ends. So actually when let's say when I'm doing it myself, it's also a handheld camera, and I follow, and I have to say the amount of concentration that I have in my body, it's almost equaling you know, let's say choreographic performance, because you need to sit down, you need to walk, and you need to use your body as a balance tool, you know, to be able to do that smoothly, and your peripheral vision, like you said, because maybe things are happening there and you need to do the smooth transition. And I also, like, you know, from a professional point of view, I really enjoyed seeing how that worked. You know, I could feel that the camera there, although of course, you know, the person who carries the camera is invisible, but it also creates this dynamics that I thought was fitting very much with actual movement of you in the frame that I was seeing.
Yeah, you know, it was really interesting. He's highly experienced videographer. A lot of performance artists work with him in Cyprus, but yeah, it was this really unique blend of kind of not kind of intervening, you know, in and kind of, although actually I did invite him to have this kind of relationship where he could cut across me if he wanted to, or if it felt like, you know, that could be interesting for the camera. So I'm quite flexible when it comes to these things, because I'm interested in how, you know, the work was ultimately going to exist as a film. So I think he can see things I can't see. So yeah, but yeah, he was very kind of like this quiet kind of presence, kind of sort of following very closely, but also quite assertively there. When in the edit, you can see kind of quite assertively there as well, because yeah, there's the kind of there are some kind of more dramatic elements which are also his way of seeing something. There's one moment which he described as the kind of Lynch moment, or you know, where he kind of, you know, has then taken parts of the sound and yeah, and the kind of speed of the camera, and done something kind of transformed the work into something new.
And this series, the whole series Variations that you're doing, it's all based on improvisation, right? As I understand. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's not. I'm like, that was not rehearsed. You were reacting to the thing in the moment, and he was reacting also to you, and it was a kind of mutual dance. At least,
yeah,
this is how I I perceived what I saw.
it was absolutely. And actually, we did 2 performances. The footage was only used from the second performance. But the first one, it was great in a sense, because the first one completely failed. Like but it was beautiful, because you know, we had the option to kind of to sort of do it again, and there was something quite strange for me, I think, recalibrating to not having an audience, where I sort of wasn't fully there in the moment to sort of be able to improvise, and there were many things that I had done and discovered in rehearsals that I was sort of trying sort of almost too hard in the first performance to push into it. And then I had to just let that go and let it be a complete rediscovery. And then this is why the second one worked so well. So I completely embraced what went wrong. You know,
I was
as a
actually, yeah, I was curious because I noticed the musician who played guitar,
Zachary.
Zachary. At some point, I think I saw it second time when I was like rewatching the video, but then I saw this flashlight attached to the riff of guitar, and it was also, I was like, wow, that's really cool. How did they come up with this? Was it also, was it something you also discovered just by working there on stage?
Yeah, so I had like so working with the flashlight and working with the mirror is something that I started to do actually in Mumbai when I had a residency there and did a performance earlier in the year, just prior to COVID in January 2020. But so it was something I wanted to kind of bring forward a little bit more in a more dynamic way. So I started attaching the lights to different places on myself. And then I really loved when I attached it to the guitar because it was just the natural movement of the guitar. It's almost, you know, is the movement leading the sound, leading the light show. It was this kind of amazing kind of choreography somehow that just happened just by attaching this.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Of course, it's absolutely different from, you know, somebody standing there and pointing the light in different
Yep,
places. That felt, you know, that felt kind of organic to the piece. That the
exactly.
flashlight
Moving
used with the guitar.
control.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, for those of you who didn't see the piece yet, I highly recommend to go and watch it. And there are a lot of beautiful elements, form-wise, shape-wise, but also texture-wise. And I know that you you were working with found objects or sometimes even discarded objects, more industrial character, but also this shapeless objects that as sculptures they don't exist until you in some kind of way ignite them or shape them with your hands. And was this element first appearing in this work in Cyprus, or that was already something that you've been working with previously?
I think it's something that's evolved over the series of the variation series. So I started working in a much more geometric way, I would say, to when 2017 when the series began. So and I'm still very, you know, attracted to the kind of the kind of geometric feature of, for example, like the concrete cube that I was using in this performance. But the gathering the sawdust and gathering the flour from a sort of nearby factory, these more formless materials enabled me to also to draw on the mirrors and to create these new forms. So it was almost like seeing the space of drawing happen at the same time as the space of sculpture. So I was interested in the tactility of the material itself, but as soon as that becomes projected, it has a two-dimensionality, or you can play around with the light so that that two-dimensionality fluctuates and becomes three-dimensional at points. And yeah, I really enjoyed that kind of fluidity of materials. And so the elements of drawing are kind of coming back into the work through this kind of formless exploration.
True. I see a question from Arzu, and she said maybe that's for later, but I actually think that's a good moment to ask this question. So she was writing, I'm just gonna read it. For you, how does it feel, or let's say, how does touch and movement influence your listening while you're performing?
Yeah, I think it influences it a lot. So for me, I'm really interested in obviously these materials that I'm gathering. I'm interested in actually, you know, particularly actually when you use when I'm using them in the dark, I'm encountering them in a way that the object doesn't have fully its kind of ordinary function. It becomes this kind of this object that I'm discovering in a new way. So for me, encountering the kind of the texture of, and it's encountering textures in relation to each other. So it will be the sawdust in relation to the mirror, like as a kind of visual display, but also something that has a sonic quality and a kind of tactile quality as I'm manipulating it with my hands. So all of these things are happening simultaneously, and it's really important for me that it's a multi-sensory improvisation. So one sense isn't necessarily privileged, although maybe it might be at certain points in the kind of, I guess, particularly using the light. But yeah, if I get too focused on one thing, then I kind of lose the possibility of going off on another tangent. So I enjoy the tactile relationship as something to bring me into this new relationship with the objects,
Yeah.
making something completely different.
So I was just thinking, in other words, both you and the audience, you need to be extra, let's say, sensitive and open during the performance. You as a performer, but also people who are present there, to be able, you know, to let's say keep all the channels open for those little unexpected things that will happen. And sometimes I guess the sounds are extremely kind of tiny, but then another moment it changes to something kind of more bombastic, or even to a music line or music chord that comes from guitar. But I'm deeply regretting that in this case I'm watching this video as an audiovisual piece, that I'm not able to be inside, like next to your hands, you know, looking at it. I was also thinking, in this kind of setups that you also call sculptural ecosystems, that include so many details, but also the play of light, the place for the audience. I mean, how close actually they can come inside of this work, but still leave space for you, you know, to move and to improvise on that.
Yeah, I like, for me, that this is, in a sense, actually, it's something that motivates me to keep going, because it's an unresolved dynamic for me. I think I use each performance and each architectural space actually as an opportunity to sort of think about the different possibilities for audience engagement. And I quite enjoy it as this unresolved question. You never know exactly how it's going to go. There was one space in South London called E.KA.TE Projects. It's a sort of an old shop front kind of space, completely glass fronted, and it also had a level at the back where you could climb up and sort of see it, but you had to walk through the space, through the installation, in order to get to that space. And what was great is that performance ended up being much longer than the performances usually are, so it was about 3 hours long. And I was collaborating with 2 other musicians, but we had this rhythm of performing and then pausing with the performance and then restarting. And so it kind of created this longer duration where people felt more informally that they could travel through and just be part of it, and then come and see it from above. And then I would also have a relationship, because for me, I'm also feeding off this dynamics of how the space moves in relation to other performers, in relation to the audience too. And I think that there's a lot more to be discovered for me with this idea of proximity, and how an audience can come into can also sort of transform the work even more, not necessarily through direct participation, although I'm thinking about sort of sensory triggers and sort of even just walking past something, you know, in order to kind of activate some kind of a sound or a kind of something I can build upon in the performance that is influenced by the movement of the audience.
I can totally relate to this feeling you're mentioning, and you know, also this the thrill of live encounter, and also that things, absolutely unexpected things that could seem in the moment minor, but then you can absorb it and
I'm losing your sound a little bit, Alina. I think I lost the last 20 seconds. It might be my internet, I don't know. Can you hear me okay?
If you cannot hear me,
Now I
maybe,
can.
yeah, you can. Yes, I was just referring to the feeling, thrills of let's say, anticipating those unexpected movements or gestures or reactions that audience can give you, and then how later you can feed it, not necessarily in that moment in that specific performance, but maybe even later, because people tend to surprise us a lot. I mean, everything that we prepared, you know, for them, how to explore the space, but they can still surprise us very much. And I was thinking about this video, that a documentation of another piece from the same series, Variations. By the way, I want to say that we gonna leave in the comment of this video the links to the website and also to the Vimeo account, where you can see more pieces from Variation series. And in one of these videos from 2017, I saw a little bit of Rebecca. Is that true? Was it her?
Yeah, Rebecca Glover, who was doing the residency with me at the Florence Trust. Yeah.
Okay, I'm pretty sure Rebecca I don't see her joining right now, but I know she's gonna watch this video later, so we can send her virtual hi.
Yeah.
And this is, so basically this was the moment when you got to know Rebecca, and also through Rebecca Glover we got to know you, and we had a chance to invite you to show this beautiful piece. And I just want to tell here a few words more about the Compulsive Initiative and the Spring program. We started this online format also already when COVID started, and our first series came out last summer in 2020. And then basically we all, you know, use this as a moment to set a deadline for ourselves to come up with a new piece. Because at that time it was very frustrating that we could not plan anything further than like 1 month. And in Summer Pulse last year, we basically all 7 founding members, we all created a new piece for the program. And in this edition, in the Spring Pulse 2021, we took a lot less space in the whole program. So it's only 3 people from Compulsive that are showing the pieces. And then doing that, we had a chance to invite 6 other artists, or we have also 1 collective that we can present in this program. And how we're doing with time? We're doing quite good. I also wanted to remind the guys that are watching us that there will be a moment for questions from the audience. So if you have something urgent, you can ask right away, or otherwise save it for later. Anyway, I can read it when you type it into the box that says add a comment, just in the bottom of the video. So if you have a question, leave it there. And I was also, while I was studying your bio, getting prepared for the talk, I also saw this, you know, dreamy country that caught my attention. There was one of the residencies that you did previously. It was in Brazil, yeah, in Rio. Could you maybe tell us how did that go? I know it was a long time ago, but I just want to dream about something warm and nice.
Yeah, we actually did a couple of residencies in Brazil, but I think the one you mean is the one in Rio rather than the one in Bahia. So this one was in 2015, and it was the first time that I actually worked with performance in relation to my sculptural work. So it was wonderful. So it was a residency at Despina in Rio de Janeiro, and was for a month, I think it was. And what was great there is it was a very open plan kind of studio, and I had the chance to meet a few other artists in residence, and there was one from Rio who was a dancer as well as a visual artist, a choreographer as well. And we started really, that's when my real interest in improvisation really kind of kicked off, because I first of all invited her to create a movement-based response to my sculpture. And she said yes, but then eventually it turned into this really interesting conversation in her studio, because she said that she needed me to become the kind of mediating point between the sculptural work and her sort of dance-based response or movement-based response. And initially I sort of felt a little uncomfortable with that. I didn't know how it would play out. But it was beautiful because it was the first time really that I was exploring my own improvised movement and how I could translate my relationship to tactility into a kind of movement-based form. And then, so I would have a relationship both with sculptural work and with my sculptural work and with her. And we bonded over, I mean, she as a as a choreographer, she was mainly interested in improvisation and how to improvise. And I've been becoming more and more interested in that through also studying the Alexander technique. Yeah, so it was a really nice way of kind of bringing together different interests. And this happened in the context of Brazil, which is also, I think for me, it was a very important moment because it, you know, the culture there also, or this kind of openness to, or this kind of fluidity between music and dance and the visual arts. And there's this, it's a kind of expressive sort of culture as well. And the way that there was kind of, you know, not necessarily kind of any I didn't sense a kind of limiting of disciplinary kind of areas. There was this really beautiful fluidity. So that was quite an inspiring experience for me. And I think I then took that forward, that spirit forward in my work. Yeah.
The Alexander technique you mentioned, I also know that also you're teaching it right now, right? In your...
Yeah, so I graduated as a teacher of the technique a couple of years ago, and during COVID I've been teaching it online.
And how is it going right now in UK, or specifically in London where you're based? Teaching mostly online. The schools are not open for workshops or places to rehearse. How does this work now?
Yeah, so I mean, with the Alexander technique, I sort of set up a business to teach only online, really, and it's something I'm planning to do anyway going forward. I also teach at Central St. Martin's, and they, at the moment, it's now turning into a kind of hybrid teaching and learning experience. So students are able to access the studios again if they're in the country, but yeah, my teaching for this term will remain online. So as it has been for the past year or so. So yeah, it's definitely a challenging time, but I also see lots of really innovative work coming out of this kind of very challenging period. Yeah, so it's a difficult time, but it's definitely pushing out some kind of interesting questions.
And innovative, you mean new?
I'm losing.
Shall I repeat?
I'm losing sound.
I should. Can you hear me again? Can you hear me
yes.
now? I will never talk from this room ever again. It was much better in the kitchen, but they told me to go away because they're cooking dinner over there. Yeah, but
yeah, innovative. I was talking about like also kind of different forms of kind of display. Like I was talking to a student about, you know, work that they had started making in relation to a kind of the space of a bus stop, or, you know, in different ways of different ways of relating to our kind of home as a kind of space of possible exhibition, or yeah, sort of finding sort of new sites for works to exist and for works to be happened upon.
That's actually very cool to hear, because the question that I was trying to ask when probably nobody heard me, it was if this innovation goes towards new subjects or new themes, or also towards new formats of presentation or of creating this contact between artists and the audience. And I was kind of secretly wishing to hear that it's something beyond, you know, this the online realm that we kind of all forced into now. So when you mentioned the bus stops, I was like, yay, you know, it's public space. At least it's not just the virtual space.
Both, yeah, I think both. I think also the space of virtual space is also kind of being critiqued, and we're kind of, the students are also kind of looking at, yeah, the relationship we have with this, with the screen, and but yeah, in relation to the tactile world as well, I would say it's a kind of, I think both spaces are being looked at equally.
That's inspiring. I want to see the works of everybody who graduates during this very strange time.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be it's gonna be something. I'm very sure. Could you maybe tell us a few things about how do you manage with the planning of your practice or of exhibitions in this situation, and what's coming next?
Yeah, in the COVID situation, you mean? Yeah. So my work is very centered around residencies. So for me, this period has been quite challenging. I was quite lucky, obviously, to when the cases were low in Cyprus to be able to travel there and make work. But there's one residency in Barcelona at Hangar that I have been invited onto, which I'm planning to do, and yeah, we're still setting the date
Mm-hmm.
right now, but hopefully we'll confirm that quite soon once we know about travel. um, yeah, so I'll hopefully be making work at Hangar and also in Athens. And in Hangar, I'm planning to really take this musical collaboration to the next phase. And I mentioned this idea of also thinking sort of spatially about how either my movements or the audience's movements might affect sort of might trigger certain sounds. And I'm interested in building up this kind of immersive soundscape through movement, through my own movement, but through other other forms of movement as well. So yeah, I'm planning on exploring this kind of musical collaboration, sound collaboration in a bit more depth with electronic interfaces. So I'm usually a very analog person. I would describe myself as an analog person, but yeah, sort of bringing in bringing in a kind of digital element that also has an analog component because it's influenced by a kind of physical movement.
I'm in a way, I would also call myself an analog person. You know, sometimes it's just like more technology doesn't mean that everything gonna be better. But I think it should be quite thrilling also first to travel there, because as well Barcelona and Athens, two of my favorite cities, and I'm gonna hold my fingers crossed for you that you can travel there
Yeah,
eventually. And
this year.
yeah. And I'm gonna ask guys that are watching us, if do you have any question for Claire? Because that's the moment to not to be shy with it. While I'm waiting for maybe somebody gonna send us a question, I just wanted to thank you for letting us show this piece and that you guys can still see it until Sunday evening. If you like what we're doing, please share the links with your friends, so with people who yeah, Arzo, I did ask that question already. And I would also take this moment while I'm still waiting, if there will be a question, to announce the next artist that we're going to present on the, let me see, what's the date? On the 15th of April. That's going to be Thursday, as every week. And her name is Ioana Mandrescu. She's a sound artist and a pianist, and she's also a member of Compulsive, a founding member of Compulsive. Okay. I need to work on not being distracted with all the messages that I see. Yeah, I see Arzu is writing something, and she had another question. Tuck, 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 tuck. I'm gonna go up. The movement. Aha. Okay, I found the question. All right, I will just read it as it is. Would you say the movement is the composition? Or do you not think about composition when improvising? Would you say the movement is the composition, or do not think about composition when improvising?
Yeah, maybe I'll split that into two parts. So do I think of the movement as the I think that the movement is certainly certainly part of the overall composition. But what's interesting for me is kind of how I can kind of bring together these kind of multisensory elements in a sense. So not to isolate movement, but it might be that my movement accidentally knocks an object that then creates a kind of visual composition or a graphic that I then respond to with sound, or maybe there's an element of sound that happens accidentally because of movement that I then emphasize through my own creation of sound, or the musician might emphasize through repetition somehow. So I think that it's a way of kind of, movement is a way of sort of releasing different possibilities in terms of sound, in terms of sculpture, in terms of the visual elements, it's really key. What was the second part, sorry, of the question?
I think the second part was, it was, or maybe you don't think about composition when you're improvising.
I think the more I think about the composition when I'm improvising, the more distracting it is. So if I'm able to take myself into the space of being able to observe the composition as it's emerging and sort of allow it to continue emerging, then yeah, I sort of follow the kind of the flow of a kind of an, but it's always this kind of balance between accident and intention. And so I think, like I was saying before about the more kind of fluid materials that I'm using, the formless materials that I'm using, I'm kind of drawing with those. So that is, there's an element of control, an element of kind of composition that hasn't been there. This is the first time that I've really brought that into the work. So maybe there's a little bit more of an element of kind of choreography or control there. But it always needs to kind of, then I need to find a way of kind of letting that go in order to kind of spur new ideas, in order for there to be a kind of a more natural kind of flow, I guess.
I think in that way it goes back to what we already discussed, you know, being open and keeping your senses open rather than, you know, trying to control and kind of choke everything that's happening. Thank you, Arzu, for questions. I'm not doing this very smoothly today, but I have to say it's very hard to find and read it from such a small screen. I'm just gonna check if there would be another. There was, I think I answered that. Yeah. Thank you, Arzu, very much for joining and for asking these questions. I think we're gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna thank you, Claire, once again. It was a big pleasure to talk to you and to see the work, and I'm really encouraging everybody who hasn't done that to watch it, and if you've done that already, share it with other people so more audience can see this piece. And we'll see you next time on Saturday with another artist talk, but before, on Thursday, we will start with Ioana Mandrescu new piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Ciao.
Thank you, everyone.